Darren Boot Clark, and today we are on location at Rasa Yoga. Today I have got the great privilege of interviewing the founder of Rasa Yoga, Tracie Hatton, otherwise known by her friends as
Padma. So please feel free to call me Padma, Darren.
Awesome, thank you. So Tracie has got a phenomenal story, and we're going to dig really deep into it, talk about her journey from the corporate life all the way into starting her own business and all the challenges that come along with that. Before we do, I want to announce that today's episode is sponsored by Coffee to the Rescue, and if you choose to buy a pound of coffee for $20, all the profits go to stopping human trafficking. So it's a good cause, and it's something I'm passionate about. So that's today's episode, Coffee to the Rescue. Check us out at coffee-to-the-rescue.myshopify.com. I'm working on a shorter link. Anyway, let's go on into the episode. So welcome to the show, Padma.
Thank you, Darren.
You
Do
bet.
you have any other name that I should consider calling you?
Yeah, Boot. Everybody calls me Boot.
Oh, I love Boot.
Yep, Boot. You know me as Boot the Weatherman.
I think I call you Boot more than...
Yeah.
But every now and then I put an S on the end, so it's not Boot.
Nope, it's Boot.
Okay,
Boot.
all right, Boot.
That is an old fraternity nickname that stuck, and now I'm Grandpa Boot to my grandkids, and I love it. You know, it just kind of stuck with me because I was the most country person in the fraternity at the time, so that's how that came about.
Well, I consider you a good friend, so
Likewise.
Boot.
You bet. Thank you, Padma. So let's talk a little bit before we get into the story. How did you get Padma?
Oh, well, the word Padma actually is a Sanskrit word for lotus, and the lotus flower is, it's a flower that starts at the bottom of a pond, you know, where it's dark, and it makes its way toward the sun, it makes its way toward the light, and it blooms open. And my yoga teacher gave me that name because that describes me.
Awesome.
I'm relentless as a lotus flower.
It kind of fits with your story.
Yeah.
I mean, it does.
Yeah.
So Padma, let's start a little bit with, tell us about, okay, so you're from Far East Texas, right?
I'm from the Golden Triangle, underneath all the petroleum stacks. I lived right under them in Borks Gardens in Nederland, Texas.
Nederland, awesome.
Go
Yep.
Big Ned.
Oh yeah, I run with a bunch of people from there. So, so you graduated high school, and let's start there.
All right. I graduated high school, and I went to college, became a mother early, and I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit.
Right.
And I don't know, really, ever since I was a little girl, I've always just had this desire to do what I can to help reduce suffering.
Okay.
You know, because I think for my own self, you know, I've felt my own share and what it feels like to feel scared, or you know, the different, to feel alone. I was a single mother for a period of time, and so had my kids. You know, ran around the Golden Triangle for a while, and wound up in Lafayette, Louisiana.
And what were you doing there?
Well, I got introduced into the oil field through some family members, and became a co-owner of an oil field service company, Jolie Instrumentation Company.
Oh wow.
Very
Okay.
successful.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. So you did the single. You were a single mother, but at the same time did the oil field sales and owner lifestyle, where you had to be out entertaining clients and
Yeah. Expense account.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
it has its ups and downs.
Yes, it does. How did you balance that? Because a mom is a very stable lifestyle, and then the entertainment, you know, going out and earning business and doing what you got to do there. You know, you got to take out clients, you got to go to dinners, and how did you balance that?
Well, you know, Boot, I'm glad you asked that. Because that's a real tender, it's a real tender place for me. Because this was in the 80s. And, you know, in the 80s, it was all about stuff, making money. You know, my kids had the swimming pool, private school, nice cars, and And I was working all the time. I didn't have any kind of life balance. And, at the time I kind of thought that my kids should be grateful, for what they get. And, but there came a time that, it was one afternoon after school. And again, like I said, this was in the 80s, so I was in my 20s at the time. And my neck hurt and everything just hurt on my body. And when my kids were doing what kids do after school, needing their mother, I just said, "Stop talking to me." And it's embarrassing to say, and it hurts a lot, but I knew in that moment that something had to be different.
Sure.
I knew I had to change. Because I knew that these little girls, these precious little girls, life was going to go forward. And I wanted to be somebody that when they were grown, that they loved. And that when they had children, that their children would love me. But I don't feel like I was very lovable. My priorities were mixed up,
Yeah, but I think if you ask any parent out there, and I went from single to grandparent. And I know I've had grandparent of the year months where I've lost it, because I had instant parenting and didn't know what to do when they stay with us. And luckily I've got Sandra to shepherd me through that because she's done it. But I think everybody can relate to that. Everybody's parenting is an evolution and learning. And you just got to do your best, right?
Yeah.
You recognize that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You saw something's got to change. So what did you do to start righting the ship?
Well, I think the reason that when I knew something had to change, as I mentioned when I was younger, I really had a sense that, I had this tendency to feel that people were hurting or that people were suffering, and I wanted to be able to help even when I was younger. And so when I had that moment, it was like, I don't know, it was like this is it. And I think when you say something and you really mean it, really, I do feel that there's a really strong force there that supports us. And I saw an ad in the newspaper, which back then it was USL in Lafayette, Louisiana, Raging Cajuns. And it was USL, and I saw this course for stress management because, see, in the 80s, Herbert Benson, there had been a lot of studies he'd done in the 70s. In the 80s, they started talking about stress and the relaxation response. So this was something that was becoming known to the general population and stuff. And so I saw this thing in the paper. I thought, okay, I got stress. I'm gonna go. Well, I go to the university. I'm late. I'm thinking it's gonna be like this table here, and I show up late, and I'm in my 1980s big shoulder pad, business suit.
Yeah, bangs.
Giant hair, yeah, big bangs, giant hair, and I get there and I'm late. And when I open the door and I turn the corner, it was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen in my life. There were no tables and there were no chairs, and there were all these shoes lined up inside the door, and everybody was sitting on the floor. And there was a guy in the front. He was an environmental law professor at USL. And he says, "Welcome, come in." And I'm like looking around. I can't even tell you what I was saying in my head.
Sure.
There's a lot of cuss words. I mean, I thought I was in a crazy form. I thought that I didn't know what was about to happen.
Right.
And I mean, just really, I was already kind of nutty, at the time, and pretty full of myself and all that. And he said, "Have a seat." Well, I don't know, the women's suits and all that back then, they were dresses. And I had to sit down on the floor.
Oh, gosh.
I got up against the wall, and I'm trying to get down, and I sat down, and I remember him to this day so fondly. He was just a wonderful human being, because there was obviously something in the room that was different. It was weird. The reason it was weird is because it was so calm.
Okay.
There was order, and that was weird to me, you know. And so I finally sat down, and he said, "By the end of this course, we'll be sitting for 45 minutes. Okay, so my mind went crazy again.
Sure.
I started going, what the? But I'm trying to play it cool on the outside, and I'm thinking, he's crazy. Why would anybody sit down and sit still for 45 minutes? Doesn't make any sense. So it's like a 6-week-long course, and a lot of people don't know. Most people in America think yoga is just postures and things.
Right, stretching, yeah.
Well, it includes like getting your mind calm and sitting and breathing and all of that. And so I went along, along, and after about the 3rd week, I kept showing up. And I didn't tell you, but by all this point in time, I was no longer single, and I'd gotten involved in a pretty rough relationship.
Okay.
Like rough, like volatile, not nice, like things where I'd sometimes be scared to go home. Different stories. Yeah, so it's like, this is a cluster. So anyway, I go a few times, and if you've ever been to Lafayette over there, I don't know if
Oh,
you've
yeah.
ever been there. Okay, well, right there on Johnson, I'm just about to pull out, and this is about my 3rd time. And I'm telling you, in that moment, I was one of those people, I thought I found God. I mean, I was looking at the stoplight, and this sounds so trivial, but I mean, I sat there and I was like, I'm not in a rush to go anywhere. I'm just sitting here looking at the stoplight. Like they put this in books about how to meditate. I realized I was totally cool with it. I was never cool with anything at any given time, staying any given way. Because at that time, I was a very driven, successful businesswoman.
Right.
And I dealt with drilling contractors that would get mad at you and tell you, we're losing millions a day if you don't get this straight.
Yeah.
And I prided myself on being able to do that. And so I was just sitting there, and
You found peace in the center of the street, just sitting at a stoplight.
I did.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. So I rushed home, and I thought, I've got to tell the teacher about this.
The aha moment.
So I call him, and I'm thinking he's going to say, whoa, you're the first person ever. I told you I was a little full of myself. You're the first person ever. And I called him, and to this day, it seems like I remember he was chopping carrots. His name was Dr. David Hoke. I remember it sounded like he's just chopping, and I'm going, you're not going to believe what happened and how this went. And he gets quiet for a long time, and he said, I have a book for you to suggest for you. And he said, it's called The Long, Quiet Highway by Natalie Goldberg. And I thought, my mind started going crazy again. Because I thought that once you got it, you got it.
Right.
I think a lot of people think that.
A fixer, right? You're
Yeah.
fixed, it's done.
I thought it was done. I didn't realize that my work had just started. And it was really from there that he actually referred me to a psychotherapist that was also a practicing yogi at the time. She taught meditation, because yoga psychology is a very comprehensive teaching. I mean, it's being taught in universities and all over under different names like positive psychology and things like this. And she started working with me and taught me a lot. And before I ever learned about yoga postures and stuff, that's what I was doing.
Wow.
I was working with breath and learning to calm my nervous system down, and over about a 3 to 4 year period, things really did start changing.
So you tackled the mind first.
I really did. I really did. And I think in part, I attribute that to my dad. My dad was a martial artist, and I grew up, with him teaching me about, the power of the mind and so on. But you're a kid. You don't really listen to your parents.
And,
You
and I
don't
mean,
think
you're
so.
a business owner. You're type A, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I am too.
I would definitely
And
say.
we don't know how to. Well, you do. I don't know how to. I'm 100 miles an hour, my hair on fire all the time, and I don't know how to calm down. I don't like being alone, and I just, So you had that aha moment, and you read the book.
I read the book. I took his recommendations. But I mean, mood. I mean, I felt nervous about this. podcast. You know, I have my moments. People,
Sure.
I was sitting at the dentist's office and I said, you know, I feel nervous. And he said, well, you're a yoga master, aren't you? I said, that's why.
Right.
I said, because I need it. I mean, we're human beings, and as human beings, yoga and Ayurveda, which is an Indian holistic modality coupled with yoga, that helps me.
Sure.
And I need it, you know, and it's, I learned, because we're talking like, what is that, in the 80s? Is that, what are we talking now, 35 years ago? It's a long time ago.
Yeah, oh yeah. That was
Right?
considered kind of new age. That was the term, right? New age?
Yes, it
Right.
really was. And I think the main reason why I even accepted it at the time, it was at the university, it was an environmental law attorney, you know, it sort of had some I's dotted and T's crossed for me so I could accept it. And so I learned a lot through it all. One, I learned that, you know, it's not just a one-time fix.
Right.
We're too sophisticated for that, you know, as human beings. We're beautiful, you know, we're created in the image of our Creator, and we're these sophisticated, divine, you know,
Live,
beings.
evolving.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
forever growing. You stop when you die.
Yeah,
And then
every day we're growing.
Right.
I mean, I feel like and I feel like everybody's our teacher. I feel like you're teaching me
Likewise,
here,
yeah.
doing this,
I can learn
you
from
know?
anybody.
Yeah, it's an ongoing, evolving process, and this is super fun, by the way.
Yeah, isn't it?
Like, I'm feeling totally like,
It's just
just keep going on.
Well, cool. So you.
As long as I don't embarrass you.
No, you're not going to
Okay,
embarrass me.
all right.
So, Padma, after you got through the mind piece, how did you transition? When did you make the break from out of the oil field service company into what came next? What came next?
Well, okay, so, you know, yoga and Ayurveda have a foundation, a very strong ethical foundation. And the idea is that yoga and Ayurveda really are not going to help one unless one learns what compassion, one learns how to be truthful with ourselves, you know,
Right.
how to see, and just really the main precepts in yoga are really about, you know, being a good citizen.
Okay.
And so, you know, so that was a really, you know, that taught me quite a bit. And so I realized that helped me to see there wasn't just this isn't a get enlightenment quick scheme.
Right.
It's not scheming, you know, there's no such thing. And so I just said, you know what, I'm going to settle in, and I'm going to find a teacher. And what began to happen is, as I lived those principles, it's like life started working. Now, sometimes it didn't seem so great though, because even though the company, you know, as I stepped out of it, it started growing like crazy, but it started growing in a way that it's difficult to handle, because we went international and all kinds of stuff. And so through a series of events, I stepped away from that. I shifted to import-export, which brought me to Houston.
Okay.
And I was considered a pretty hot commodity because of contacts and things like that. So I ended up going to work for another company here in Houston, and ended up doing, the people that were my customers when I had the company ended up being my customers then. And then the way it worked out is, one time one of the engineers said, you know, the ways that you help us here, you could invoice us for that. And I was like, So that was just the beginning, because I started really helping them, deal with the everyday challenges of being in the oil field.
Okay.
And it started happening more and more, and it was like there was no sudden, you know, I'm here, then I'm there. It was the next day I looked up and I wasn't even in the oil field anymore. And I was corporate coaching for day spas, because I ended up going through a coaching course.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and all of this, you know, so I could really start working, using what I'd learned, and it was all yoga. Everything I learned in the coaching course was everything that I had learned in yoga psychology, and through all of the teachings in yoga psychology, like, you know, cooperation, you know, having a good relationship with yourself and your body, but then, so things evolved over time. I'm here in Houston. I made some strong decisions about my future. The biggest one being was that I wanted to have a life that felt really well integrated. Like I didn't want to have a life where I go to my work, then I see my kids, then I do my yoga practice, then I wanted something that felt really well integrated. I didn't know what that looked like, but I just kept living what I had learned.
Okay.
And at the time, I was also running quite a bit. I was training for a marathon.
Oh, wow.
This is the story of how I found the physical practice.
Okay.
Right? So I was really quite a fit person, exercising. I came from a real big exercise background. I'm the oldest of brothers, that most of them were weightlifters, martial artists, and so that's kind of my childhood. And so I kind of went, yoga, you know? 'Cause, I mean, get it. I came from this like,
Right,
you
and
know?
I'm gonna go slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know much about the postures part of it. Because I entered in from a different direction,
Sure.
right? So, I was training for this marathon, but the problem was that I was running with some obvious misalignments, some physical things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I trained, didn't train properly, push, and about 4 a.m. one morning, it's super dark outside, I'm out running, and I just collapsed. My IT band on my left side was pretty severely damaged, and at the time, my teacher said, you may want to consider all of yoga. He said, you may want to, go to work here. And that's when I knew I needed to find a teacher, who was familiar with yoga psychology, familiar with Ayurveda, somebody that was familiar with everything and was really a true master, and
Okay.
I've just been extremely fortunate to just really land in the lap of some of the finest human beings as teachers.
Sure.
And so...
Well, I think you bring in what you project, right? So you're going to call into you what you project, and as long as you're going in the right direction, it's going to come to you.
Yes,
I mean, you're going to grow
yes.
as long as you're open to growing.
Yes, exactly. And so then from there, as I learned about that, and I have been learning about the Ayurveda aspect of it, I started working with people, just for free. I started teaching them things, and it really harkened back to when I was really little, and I used to do stuff like that when I was little in my neighborhood, but I didn't really know what I was doing. It wasn't yoga per se, but I always had you know how Lucy on Charlie Brown?
Yeah.
Like that was me
Okay.
when I was a kid.
Right.
I had to stand, and the people would come in, and all of this, and I would be doing that kind of stuff.
Cool.
And I was even doing fundraisers when I was a kid for muscular dystrophy. It's always like wanting to help reduce suffering.
Sure.
I didn't have those words back then, but I realize now that that I feel if someone suffers, we all suffer. As long as one human being, and that's why I think it's what's going on with Coffee to the Rescue and with that work. That is so close to my heart, and I think that's incredible, because isn't it true that if one person is suffering, whether it's from, whether they're in the prison of their own mind of panic attack disorder, anxiety, or, their body feels like it's betraying them, or human trafficking, from one extreme to the other.
You're a prisoner of just filth, disgust, and how can we get them out?
Yes.
And then when you get them back into society where they can feel whole, right?
Yes, and I feel you, and I feel like this is such a great thing that you're doing, because if we can all strengthen ourselves enough to where we can realize that if one human being is suffering, I mean, we're one organism,
right?
On the movie Interstellar, Matthew McConaughey says at one point, he says, when we can really see that we are not just one species, we're one organism, and we've got to see each other as that and do what we can, what's within our realm or what's within our space, and
sure.
so
make our center of influence the best it can be.
Absolutely, and that's. Life isn't easy for me sometimes, I was just sharing with a student today, I said, when I wake up first thing in the morning, it's like, okay, what do I feel? My body is heavy, I'm tired, I've got a bunch of things that I need to do. And I have to literally go pick up my trident, my bow, and my angel wings. I gotta get up, and I gotta put them on, and I gotta grab them, and I gotta go, okay, you made a promise. And that's what gets me going every day.
Yep.
Because I feel like I've made this promise to my fellow human beings, to myself and to my fellow human beings. And really that's what I'm doing now. And it's the most well I've ever been in my life. I'm almost 60 years old. Since I was, in my early 20s, I feel way better now
Sure.
than I ever felt.
Yeah.
And I love hanging out with people that love that and want to get well so they can step up and say, how can I play my role? But, the thing is, though, is that, and I learned this for myself, because I mentioned that, for the most part of my life, I did want to help people.
Yeah.
But, if you yourself are suffering, it's like that day in the driveway with my girls. And, I feel like I want to cry right here now, even when I think about it, because it's so potent for me. But I was suffering. Like, my body hurt. When people would call my name, I'd have to turn my head and I'd go, okay, I'll be right there. And I couldn't hardly move. I was always pulling on my neck, and everything was hurting.
A lot of stress.
Everything hurt.
Yeah.
My mind hurt. My heart hurt. I longed to be a better mother. I longed, I just hurt. I was suffering. So really, I think even though we all want to really be a good person and be good to each other, I think what people have to understand is that you've got to be good to yourself.
It starts with you, right? You can't help anybody else till you can help yourself.
Yeah, and I learned that, the more that my own suffering was reduced and calmed, the stronger that I felt physically, the more energetic. It's all about, having that life force. The more energetic I felt, the more calm I felt emotionally, then the stronger and the more meaning I can feel in my own life. I just did a talk last night on a meaningful life, and I feel like my life can have meaning because meaning is derived from contribution to others,
Sure.
And I think it's a cycle because, neuroscience are learning, in neuroscience and psychiatry and the research that's done now, they know that, the best medicine when we feel down is to give to others.
Yeah, you want to get out of your situation, help somebody else get out of theirs. They can't get back, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I've noticed, like, if I get whiny, if I'm like, wah, wah, and when I feel whiny, and that's when I start feeling like a wilting flower. But when I go, wait a minute, this is my own little lingo. I say, no, I made a vow. I made a promise to myself and the world. And when I do that, it's like something happens, my endocrine system, I have different chemicals in my body. I feel stronger, and and I'm ready to go.
To help others.
It
right?
does.
It's that power. It's not a power. It's kind of selfish. Being selfless is kind of being selfish, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to feel better because you do it, and you don't expect anything in return.
Yeah.
So that's a great segue to you got healthy to somewhat, and when you're all constantly getting healthy.
Yeah.
But you got to a point where you said, you know what? I've been teaching people for free, but I want to make this a way of life, and I want to make this a way of making a living. So how did Rasa Yoga start?
No.
You just started.
That's the part. Yeah, that's the part. Okay, yeah. So it's in Pasadena, Texas, and there was a house there, an amazing woman, CPA, and around the corner of Vista and Preston, and she let me use a room in there to start.
Wow.
And her daughter and I had two students in there, and they came in and they started bringing people, and we outgrew the room, and then there was another room in the house. We outgrew that room, and Then there was another room, and I kept growing into the rooms, and I had to start paying rent. So there was a demand, right?
Yep,
And
yep.
they said, yeah, we'll pay you. They said, absolutely. They said, not only will we pay you, but it'd be really great if you create a schedule where you'd have more classes. And I said, oh, so I tell you, the crazy thing about living by the principles that I've learned is that I respond to demand. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I'm not one of those people that went out and I'm gonna build this big building. I'm a Zen business instructor too, and
Okay.
I learned this, from great Zen business master Jason Campbell, and I learned that it's really best not to go out there and get overhead so high that you have to sacrifice your values and what you're giving.
Yep.
And that really stood out in my mind, and I waited till I was so packed in that I'd have to go to the next level. And that's what happened. I moved from there, and then I moved to another location. And then eventually I was teaching to a bunch of martial arts, world-class martial arts guys, and one of the guys in that room owned the building that we're in now, which was exponentially bigger than where I was.
Yeah, this is a campus.
Yeah.
I call it a campus. It's big enough to be called a campus.
It is, while we were doing the build out, before we even moved in here, because it was difficult in Pasadena at that time anyway, because this was in the 90s. Like I'd started latter 90s, early 2000, so it was still fairly new to everyone, and I only kind of sort of hung out my shingle. It was kind of sort of hanging out my shingle,
Right.
And people just started coming. And then when the guy that owned this building, he said, look, if you can make it where you are, he said, you're going to do great in Clear Lake, Webster.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I got a building I want you to look at. And I went and looked at it, and I looked at where we are right now, and I was like, I felt that this is really big, but he made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
There you go. Again,
and,
drawing it in, right?
Yeah.
Called it into you.
The minute that I announced, because I had already been doing talks at NASA, I had already been doing talks at the different school districts on how to use principles in yoga to be safer on the workplace, or how to be more functional in the workplace.
Right.
Because yoga and Ayurveda are all about being really functional.
Okay.
Right? And so anyway, before we even, honestly, oh no, I shouldn't tell that part. Okay, I'll tell it. Honestly, before I even signed the lease, I already had like 100 people.
That's business 101.
I said, let's sign the lease, and let's get moving. And we had already tripled our current enrollment before we moved in.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And it's the people that come here to Rasa Yoga, just it's fun. I simply, coming from where I've come from, and like I said, it was a lot of work. So I don't want listeners to feel like, oh, this should be super simple. But coming from where I've come from, life really is meant to be meaningful.
Yeah.
And I want to love where I walk in every day, and I love walking into my work every day.
Well, what they're seeing is it's an iceberg, right? They're seeing what's above the water. Mm-hmm. There's about 90% that nobody sees that you went through hell and back.
Yeah,
and
you're good.
I'm sure
that's good. That's a great metaphor.
A lot of crying, a lot of sleepless nights. How are we going to make it?
Yes.
Do I want to leave this business that I'm making a buku money at? Yeah, I'm not being the world's best mom, but I'm providing everything they could ever want.
Yes.
Do I want to step back and take a leap of faith and go into something that's new age that people aren't going to see, or at the time perceived? I mean, yoga's now mainstream.
Oh yes,
right?
It's everywhere.
Now, I would say, even 8 to 10 years ago, it wasn't as mainstream. It's ever evolving. I mean,
right.
You've got Navy SEALs that do yoga. You've got football players. You've got world-class athletes, school districts. There's yoga therapy. 10 years ago, there wasn't that. I mean, and I think some of the elite athletes and the tip of the spear of their profession probably did it because they need that. Mm-hmm. But it's not as mainstream as, I mean, you can go to Walgreens and or CVS has a yoga section.
Right.
I mean, they're teaching yoga at the one in Seabrook. Mm-hmm. They teach yoga classes. Now, it's not what you guys do, it's more of the exercise yoga, but And my wife does yoga, and she takes classes here, and she's in the master class. So I learned a lot more than what laymen know, and I'm still a layman. I know very little, but I know that there's different types of yoga, right? And there's mind, body, soul, then there's exercise, and there's hot yoga, and
yeah. Well, with our general classes,
variety's the spice of life. So each is their own, right?
Right.
But I will say that Rasa Yoga is the #1 studio,
yes.
right? It's renowned.
Yes.
You'll never say it, but I will, because you told me. You've trained professional athletes, political figures, right?
Yes.
Like really big political figures.
Right.
And it's people that need a way to relax and calm down and get centered.
Yes.
Right? So you offer something for anybody.
Anybody.
It doesn't matter. You're not judging anybody.
Right.
Everybody can come in here and be their own person and be who they are and not be judged or not be fanboyed or fangirled. And you also offer private lessons.
Right.
Because there are some people that get to a stature where they have to be that way, right? Just for their own
Well,
comfort.
I think some people need it because when you come in and from the physical perspective, let's say if you've got a therapeutic issue, because we do have an International Association Yoga Therapy accredited program, and we train therapists, which is, in this program is a great program, but if somebody comes into a general class where there's like 10, 15, 20 people, and let's say if they tend to have a pattern or way of moving in their body that's really not good for their body, they might repeat that in a group class. So it may be really good to have a yoga therapist look at them one-on-one to help them make a shift in the general class.
Right.
Yeah.
So, great way to talk about somebody's new, they're hearing this, they're like, I want to give this a try. I'm not going to tell nobody, right? Or maybe I'll tell the world, but how does somebody get interested in starting yoga? So, and
yeah,
tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the best way to come in, we have an intro offer, makes it super easy, so you can be here for 30 days. Right? So
30 for 30?
Yeah, 30 days for $30. And we have over 35 classes a week, right? And so we are a school, so it's a little bit different, slightly different in that everybody here, everybody that's teaching is a student, they're learning. And that's what makes it really great, because everybody's a student. Even I'm a student. Every teacher's a student, so there's not this hierarchy when you walk in, somebody's going to be saying, oh, well, because we've all been there and done that. And so
and still are.
Yeah, oh yeah, and we'll continue to be. Right? And so, the best way really for somebody that's new is that 30 days, and then they can come in and we have a wellness concierge, that's a fancy name, for somebody that's going to sit down and kind of help them make a plan. But they can come to as many or any classes that they want, but depending on what the student needs, they'll help them make a plan for that 30 days that will really support them, to help them with their particular needs.
And help them ease into it versus
absolutely.
getting immersed and overwhelmed and then, oh my gosh, I'm out, right?
Yeah.
Buyer's remorse happens at any place.
Absolutely.
People go to the gym on New Year's and by February they're done,
Yeah.
They didn't get introduced to it right and didn't get set up. So you've set them up to succeed, right?
Change can be tough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're coming to somewhere like Rasa Yoga to positively change, right? Positively change and to find some peace in their life. So we don't need that to be chaos.
Right. I think everybody is really longing for a little peace.
Sure, life's hard.
And I think that we need more gentleness, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Gentle and peace and ease. Ease.
I mean, people are mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. And life's hard. The old saying, you want to see if your dog, your wife, or your husband loves you more? Put them both in the trunk of the car and open it up in an hour and see who comes out wagging their tail and liking you, the one that's cussing you, right?
I haven't heard that one before.
So people can be vindictive and mean, but at the end of the day, we all want to be our best person. And we all want to be the best we can be to others and to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And make our life a better place. And, I hope, at least me, I hope that whenever I go on to be with God, that I've made the world a little better. I've given my grandkids something, have touched some people in some way, right? That's the goal for me, and I think everybody wants to do that.
I like you.
But you know, it's important, and on top of the 30 days for $30 intro, you have an event coming up.
Yes, we do.
Let's talk about your event.
All right.
That Coffee for the Rescue is sponsored.
Yeah.
Let's sponsor. I'm so excited to do that.
I know. It's at Texas Avenue Park. I'm the founder of the Bay Area Yoga Collective. My goal behind that is really to bring the walls down between like-minded businesses, people like you and other yoga studios, anyone that, you know, that really kind of cares about, you know, about being more healthy and helping others to have a more peaceful way of life, just like, you know, what you were talking about. And that Bay Area Yoga Collective is we offer a free day of yoga. We do it a couple times a year, and it's coming up in March, the first Sunday. Wait, no,
March 8th.
First Sunday, March 8th. It's the second Sunday in March. And it's at the Texas Avenue Park in Webster, Texas. And it's in the morning. It is for everyone. It's what I call fun yoga. A lot of times people feel a little concerned about coming out because they're like, well, I don't do yoga. Even if you don't have a mat, we have mats out there for you. You can have fun. There's kids yoga. And your beautiful bride is the most awesome kids yoga teacher out there.
She loves it. That's her. She thinks about it every single minute. She loves the kids yoga.
Yeah, well, that's her
and it's
part.
fun and music and it's interactive. And I know when you do yoga in the park, free day of yoga, it's interactive too, right? I mean,
yes, it's fun.
There's some music to start out with, and stretching, setting the intention. And then you go into it, and it's not just Rasa Yoga. There's other schools that are invited too.
All yoga schools are invited to come out. Yoga schools can even be sponsors and vendors if they want. When I'm out there, I'm Bay Area Yoga Collective, and it's like I want everybody like minds to come out.
And you have people that teach at other schools that train here.
Oh yes. As a matter of fact, we invite the teachers that have been through my training program. At this next one coming up, Judy Wesley teaches at Lifetime Fitness, and she trained here in our program and graduated, and I invited her. And I've had others like Sarah Taylor, she's taught at Bar, and Bliss Fitness, and several others. So, you know, I really think there's enough for us all.
Oh, it's a community, right? I mean,
it's a community, and we do this fun round robin teaching. It's not like there's just one teacher, and you know, Denise and Sarah, they'll be teaching, and they just take turns teaching, and it's not this formal, uptight thing. And then there's people like you that people can come visit, because we have all sorts of great sponsors and vendors out there, from Only the Greatest, Heavenly Blue. I wish I could just name them all. So there's a lot of great,
it's cool stuff. I mean, it really is.
Vendors out there.
And it starts. What are the hours?
We start at 8 in the morning and we end at 11:30.
Okay, so from March 8th on Texas Avenue. And what's the park's name?
And it's Texas Avenue Park.
Texas Avenue Park from 8 to 11.
And the event is on the Facebook page under Bay Area Yoga Collective. So you can go to Bay Area Yoga Collective Facebook page and like that page, and you'll see the event on there. And on there they'll see information about you and Coffee to the Rescue and our other vendors and sponsors.
Sure. And then if they want to find out more about Rasa Yoga, where would they go to find out that?
Okay, and the 30 for 30 that I talked about, you can get that on Facebook by going to our Facebook page, Rasa Yoga School, and that's RASA Yoga School, or our website is www.rasayogaschool.org.
Awesome. Well, Padma, this has been so fun. I really enjoyed it.
I know, and I don't feel nervous.
No, I told you, it's just going to be us talking, and we're two type A's, but we both, I think we've got a PhD in talking.
Yeah, I think so. I think there ought to be a sequel.
I agree. And you know, this is the first time we've really sat down and talked. We did our pre-interview, but I've known you for years, but we haven't really hung out, right, like this. I mean, I've come to the parties and stuff, but it's really cool. I really enjoyed it. I think we need to do another one and talk about some of the classes that you offer, the different therapies, and maybe the retreats, because I know that you do. We didn't even touch the retreats. They go to these exotic places for 2 or 3 weeks, and Italy and India, and Austin.
Yeah.
So
And
there's a lot. We just, like I said, it's the iceberg. We just cracked the surface on Rasa yoga and on Padma and on just yoga in general. So stay tuned.
Yeah, we could talk for a long, long time.
You bet. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.